When a humble maid's son secretly translates a sealed German document left on a billionaire's desk, he uncovers a scheme that could destroy an empire and expose a son's betrayal. In a single act of courage, the boy no one noticed forces the most powerful man in the city to confront the truth, proving that sometimes the smallest voice can rewrite the destiny of giants. Before we continue, subscribe now to the channel to receive powerful, heart-touching stories every day. The Blackbourne mansion rested in a silence so thick it could almost be touched. Morning light filtered through tall windows, drawing pale lines over the marble floor. Clara Carter, in her blue Maid uniform, moved carefully across the room, dusting the mahogany shelves filled with law books and framed achievements. Her son, Noah, followed behind her, 17, slim, with observant eyes that never missed a detail. He carried a small cloth and a quiet curiosity that often got him into trouble. Clara turned, lowering her voice. "Noah, don't touch anything on Mr. Alexander's desk. You know how strict he is." He nodded obediently, though his gaze lingered on the massive oak desk that dominated the center of the room. It was covered in neat piles of papers, silver pens, and a single folder sealed with a golden emblem. The air smelled faintly of old ink and polished wood, like secrets carefully preserved. As Clara stepped out for a moment to fetch more cleaning supplies, Noah's eyes returned to the folder. A slip of paper had fallen slightly out of place, revealing foreign letters printed in bold. He leaned closer. The words were in German, a language he had secretly studied late at night, using books his mother brought home from the trash of a private school. He whispered one of the words softly, almost testing its weight on his tongue. Then another. His heartbeat quickened. What was a document written entirely in German doing on Alexander Blackbourne's desk? Noah hesitated, glancing at the door. The mansion was silent, too silent. He gently lifted the paper, scanning the first few lines, his brow furrowing as the meaning unfolded. A strange tension filled his chest. Whatever this document was, it wasn't just business. It was something far bigger and far more dangerous than he could have imagined. The ticking of the antique clock was the only sound in the room as Noah held the paper in trembling hands. The more he read, the colder his body felt. The words weren't about expansion or partnership as the letterhead suggested. They spoke of transferencia total de activos, a full transfer of assets. His eyes widened. The names of companies, bank accounts, and foreign branches filled the page like a silent betrayal. At the bottom, the signature of Alexander Blackbourne gleamed in blue ink. He took a step back, his breath shallow. If he was reading this correctly, the document meant that everything, the factories, the orphanage foundation, even the workers' pension funds, would soon belong to a company called Kronberg Industries. Noah swallowed hard, the meaning crashing down on him. He wasn't supposed to see this. He wasn't even supposed to understand it. Yet the truth now lived in his mind like a spark that couldn't be undone. Footsteps echoed in the corridor. Startled, Noah hurried to put the paper back exactly as it was. But his hand slipped, and the golden seal tore slightly along the edge. He froze. The sound of approaching shoes grew louder, measured, heavy, and sharp. His heart pounded as he turned toward the door, his fingers still clutching the corner of the paper. The handle twisted, and before he could move, the tall figure of Lucas Blackbourne stepped inside, his cold gaze locking onto Noah's startled face. Lucas Blackbourne's polished shoes clicked against the marble floor as he advanced into the room. Dressed in an impeccable charcoal suit, he looked every inch the heir, confident, sharp, and utterly untouchable. His expression hardened when he noticed the loose papers on his father's desk. "What are you doing here?" His tone cut through the air like a blade. Noah froze, clutching the cloth in his hand. "I was just cleaning, sir." The paper. It was falling. I didn't mean. Lucas snatched the document before he could finish. His eyes flicked over the German text, but it was clear he didn't understand a word. You think you can read this? He sneered. Do you even know what language this is? Something in Noah's quiet confidence unsettled him. It's German, Noah replied softly. And it's not what it looks like. It's not a partnership deal. Lucas laughed, a hollow, arrogant sound. Oh, really? And how would you know that? You're the maid's son, not a translator. Noah lowered his gaze, but didn't back down. Because I can read it. It says the company is being sold to Kronberg Industries, and that includes. Enough. Lucas's voice exploded, echoing off the walls. He stepped closer, his face inches from Noah's. You're lying. My father would never sign something like that. But behind the fury in his eyes, a flicker of uncertainty appeared. He turned toward the door, calling sharply, Let's see what my father thinks of your little story. Noah's pulse raced as Lucas grabbed him by the arm and pulled him toward the main hall. The heavy doors of the main hall swung open, revealing a room filled with investors, assistants, and the commanding presence of Alexander Blackburn himself. At 68, with silver hair perfectly combed and an aura of authority that silenced anyone nearby, he stood near the fireplace discussing figures with Evelyn Ross, his poised secretary. The sudden noise drew every eye as Lucas dragged Noah inside like a criminal. Father, Lucas's voice boomed. Look what I found snooping around your office. He was reading your confidential documents. Gasps rippled through the room. Noah tried to speak, but Lucas shoved the paper into Alexander's hands first. He says he can read this, and that it's something dangerous. Imagine that. The maid's boy trying to play translator. Alexander's eyes, cold and piercing, moved from his son to the trembling teenager. Clara appeared in the doorway, her face pale. Please, sir, it was a misunderstanding. My son didn't mean any harm. But Alexander raised a hand, silencing her instantly. The silence was suffocating. You read this? He asked Noah, his tone controlled but dangerous. Noah hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. It's written in German. It says the company's properties will be transferred to Kronberg Industries, including, his voice faltered as the words caught in his throat, the orphanage under your foundation. For a moment, no one breathed. The fire crackled softly behind Alexander. Evelyn's eyes widened. Lucas's confident smirk began to fade, but pride kept him upright. Alexander looked down at the paper, then at Noah again. Something shifted in his gaze, curiosity, disbelief, a trace of fear. The hall felt suddenly smaller, the air heavier, as Alexander's grip tightened on the document. His sharp eyes darted over the German lines, searching for familiarity among the foreign words. Evelyn stepped closer, her heels clicking softly on the marble. Sir, I can have this verified immediately, she offered, but her voice trembled ever so slightly. Lucas scoffed, forcing a laugh. Father, you're not really going to listen to him, are you? It's ridiculous. He's probably making things up to look smart. The investors exchanged uneasy glances, their whispers forming a restless hum around the room. Noah stood motionless, his hands clasped, every instinct screaming for him to disappear, yet something stronger held him there. I can prove it, he said quietly. All eyes turned to him. I can translate it right now. Please, just let me read one line aloud. Alexander's jaw tightened. The boy's voice was steady, too steady for a lie. Very well, he said at last, his tone cutting through the murmurs. Go on. Noah took a breath and began to read in fluent German, his voice calm and precise. Alle Vermögenswert, einschließlich der Gemeinnützigen Stiftung Fairview, Werden and Kronberg Industries Abertragen. Then he looked up. It means, all assets, including the Fairview Charity Foundation, will be transferred to Kronberg Industries. The reaction was immediate. Evelyn's lips parted in disbelief. One of the investors muttered, "That's impossible." Lucas's complexion turned pale as if the ground beneath him shifted. Alexander lowered the paper slowly, his expression unreadable. But the silence that followed wasn't disbelief anymore. It was the kind that comes when everyone realizes the impossible might be true. Alexander's voice broke the silence at last, calm but laced with steel. "Evelyn, check the digital archive. See if this file exists in our system." She hurried to a nearby laptop, her fingers flying across the keys. Lucas tried to keep his tone confident, though his voice trembled. "Father, this is nonsense. Some translator probably sent a draft or—" "Quiet," Alexander ordered, not raising his eyes. The weight of his authority crushed the words in Lucas's throat. Everyone in the hall watched Evelyn's face as she scrolled through the corporate database. Seconds passed like hours. Then she froze. Her voice came out thin. "It's here, sir. The same document. Time-stamped 3 days ago. It's scheduled for automatic transmission to Kronberg Industries in 48 hours." A shudder went through the room. One of the investors whispered a curse under his breath. Another demanded to know who approved it. Lucas's hand gripped the back of a chair, his knuckles white. "That's not possible," he muttered. "It's not supposed to be." He stopped himself, but it was too late. Alexander's gaze snapped to him. "You knew," Alexander said softly. The quietness of his tone made it far more terrifying than a shout. "Didn't you?" Lucas stammered, shaking his head, but his eyes betrayed him. Evelyn looked between them, realization dawning. Noah stood near the doorway beside his mother, watching the unthinkable unfold, a dynasty trembling on the edge of collapse. Alexander took a step toward his son, the paper still in his hand. "Tell me the truth, Lucas, before this document does it for you." The color drained from Lucas's face. "Father, I didn't." His voice cracked before the words found form. Alexander's expression didn't move. Only his eyes burned with a fury that made the air itself feel thinner. The gathered investors waited in tense silence, sensing that the Blackborn Empire, once built on precision and fear, was unraveling before them. Evelyn swallowed hard, stepping closer. "Sir, the file's metadata shows that someone with executive clearance uploaded it. The authorization code belongs to—" She hesitated, glancing at Lucas. His shoulders stiffened. Alexander's tone turned to ice. "Say it." To Lucas Blackborn. A stunned gasp spread across the room. The young heir clenched his fists, unable to meet his father's eyes. "It wasn't what it looks like. Kronberg offered me a partnership, just business leverage, nothing more. You never trusted me to handle anything. I just wanted—" Alexander cut him off. "You wanted what, Lucas?" "To trade our legacy for pride." His voice grew heavier, every word measured and sharp. Noah stood frozen beside his mother, the scene unfolding like something too heavy for him to witness. Lucas's arrogance had vanished. What remained was a desperate man cornered by his own ambition. "You don't understand," Lucas said weakly. "They promised control, not a takeover." Alexander stepped closer until they were face to face. "Control?" he whispered. "You've already lost it." For the first time, Lucas flinched, not at the words, but at the look in his father's eyes, a mixture of disappointment and grief too deep to bear. No one in the room moved. The empire that once seemed indestructible now trembled beneath the weight of silence. Alexander turned his back on his son, gripping the edge of the table for support. His reflection stared back at him from the polished surface, an image of a man who built everything through control, only to see it crumble through his own blood. The document lay open beside him, a wound in paper form. Evelyn's voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Sir, if the transfer goes through, Kronberg will gain full access to all domestic and international holdings. Every subsidiary, every foundation. She hesitated, then added, including Fairview Orphanage. The name hit Alexander like a blow. That orphanage carried his late wife's name on its gate. It was his one act of mercy in a life defined by power. Lucas stepped forward, desperation replacing arrogance. I can fix this, Father. Let me talk to them. I'll reverse the deal. Alexander turned slowly, his stare hollow. You've done enough. His voice cracked for the first time. The only person who showed me the truth today wasn't my son. It was the boy you mocked. His gaze shifted to Noah, standing near the doorway, uncertain whether to stay or run. The old man's eyes softened for a fraction of a second. You read what no one else dared to see. The words hung in the air like smoke, and for the first time, Lucas realized that his father's respect, something he had chased his entire life, had just been given to someone else. Noah felt every pair of eyes turn toward him. He wanted to disappear, to melt into the marble floor, but Alexander's gaze held him still. Come here, the old man said, quieter now. Clara hesitated, clutching her son's arm. Please, sir, he didn't mean to. I said come here, Alexander repeated, his tone leaving no space for fear or excuses. Noah stepped forward slowly, his heart racing. He stopped just a few feet away from the man who ruled entire industries. Alexander studied him for a long, uncomfortable moment. You understood this document before any of my lawyers did, he said. How? Noah hesitated, unsure if honesty would sound like defiance. My mother brings home old books from school she cleans. I taught myself to read them. German, French, sometimes Latin. The murmur in the room grew louder, investors whispering in disbelief. Evelyn's lips parting slightly, as if the boy's words had shifted something inside her. Lucas looked away, jaw clenched, his pride splintering with every second. Alexander nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving Noah's face. You learned what men with degrees couldn't, and you did it in silence. Clara lowered her head, tears threatening to fall. He only wanted to learn, sir. Please, don't punish him for it. Alexander shook his head. Punish him? No. He may have just saved everything I built. His tone carried something new, something fragile, and perhaps reminded me what I almost forgot. Lucas turned sharply, voice shaking. You're really going to take his side? Over your own blood? But Alexander didn't answer. He didn't need to. Lucas's words echoed in the hall, but Alexander didn't flinch. His silence was heavier than anger, and somehow far more punishing. He set the document down on the table, straightened his posture, and looked at his son with the calm of a man standing in the aftermath of a storm. My blood, he said finally. Blood means nothing when the heart forgets its duty. Lucas's throat tightened. Everything I did was for this family. No, Alexander replied quietly. You did it for yourself. You wanted the power without the weight that comes with it. His voice deepened, almost breaking. And that's why you failed to see what this boy saw, the truth. Evelyn's eyes glistened as she watched the old man struggle between authority and heartbreak. Clara stood at the edge of the room, holding her hands together, praying silently that her son wouldn't pay for a war that wasn't his. Noah, uncertain, took a step back, as if his presence alone might make things worse. But Alexander turned to him again. Do you understand what you've done today, Noah? The old man asked. Noah's answer came softly. No, sir. I just didn't want anyone to get hurt. Alexander's jaw trembled. He blinked, and for the briefest second, the mask of control slipped away, revealing a man who saw his entire legacy reflected in a boy he was never supposed to notice. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the hills. The thunder outside deepened, rattling the tall windows as rain began to tap against the glass. Alexander exhaled slowly, the weight of years settling onto his shoulders. He turned toward the investors and dismissed them with a quiet gesture. Chairs scraped against the marble as the room emptied, leaving only Evelyn, Lucas, Clara, and Noah. The vast hall suddenly felt too large for what remained of them. Alexander faced his son once more. "You will stay here," he said firmly. "Running won't fix what you've done." Lucas bristled. "You think you can lecture me now? After treating me like a ghost for years? You never trusted me with anything." His voice cracked with rage and grief. "I just wanted to prove that I could do more than live in your shadow." The words hung between them, raw and trembling. Alexander's expression softened but didn't waver. "I wanted a son who would protect what we built, not gamble it away. But I see now, that was my mistake. I raised you to fear failure, not to value truth." For a moment, the storm outside mirrored the one within. Lucas lowered his head, his chest rising and falling unevenly. Clara instinctively placed a hand on Noah's shoulder, as if to shield him from the tension that filled the air. Evelyn stood silently near the table, watching something fragile unfold, something that power and wealth had long buried. Alexander's eyes flicked once more toward the torn edge of the golden seal, the mark of deceit that started it all. His next words came quietly, almost to himself. "I won't let this legacy end in lies." The rain had grown heavier, drumming against the roof in restless rhythm. Alexander crossed the room and stopped before the desk, where the incriminating document still waited, stained with the fingerprints of pride and truth. He picked it up, the paper trembling slightly in his hand. Every face in the room turned toward him. Clara lowered her eyes, expecting the worst, but what came next left them speechless. Alexander tore the document in half, then again, until the golden emblem that once symbolized power lay in shredded pieces on the floor. The sound of tearing paper echoed like a verdict. "This ends here," he said. "From this day forward, no one in this house will be treated as invisible." Noah's breath caught. He looked to his mother, whose tears fell silently. Lucas stared in disbelief. "You can't just destroy that. The company is nothing without integrity," Alexander interrupted. "And integrity," he continued, turning to Noah, "is something this boy understands better than any of us." He reached for a leather folder on his desk and wrote something quickly before handing it to Evelyn. "Prepare the scholarship papers. Noah Carter is to receive full sponsorship for his studies abroad." Clara gasped, covering her mouth. "And you," Alexander added, facing her gently, "will oversee Fairview Orphanage. It deserves hands that remember where they came from." For the first time in years, Alexander's voice carried warmth instead of command. Yet beneath that moment of grace, the storm outside raged on, as if the world itself refused to let redemption come quietly. Lucas stood frozen, disbelief etched across his face. "You're rewarding them?" His voice rose, brittle and broken. "They're servants, Father, and you're giving them everything that should have been mine." His words echoed through the empty hall, trembling between anger and despair. Alexander turned slowly, meeting his gaze. "I gave you everything that should have been enough," he said quietly. "But you mistook privilege for power. You wanted the title, not the responsibility." His tone was calm, almost sorrowful, as he stepped closer. "You saw them as less, yet they showed more honor than you ever did." Lucas shook his head, his voice splintering. "You don't understand. I did it for you, so you'd finally see me." "I see you now," Alexander replied, "but not the way you wanted." The words struck harder than anger ever could. For the first time, Lucas's arrogance faltered completely. His hands dropped to his sides, and his breath came in uneven gasps. Noah watched quietly, unsure whether to feel pity or fear. Clara, sensing the heaviness of the moment, stepped forward just enough to whisper, "Mr. Blackburn, please. He's still your son." Alexander's eyes softened. "Yes," he said, "and that's why he must learn what it means to lose everything before he can understand what truly matters." Lucas turned away, his reflection distorted in the glass as lightning split the sky beyond the window. The storm outside began to fade, its thunder replaced by a soft rain tapping gently against the windows. The air in the mansion felt lighter, as though the walls themselves had released a long-held breath. Alexander stood beside the fireplace, its warmth reflecting faintly in his tired eyes. Evelyn approached him quietly, holding the signed scholarship forms. "Everything's ready, sir." He nodded, then looked toward Noah and Clara. "You'll both stay here tonight. Tomorrow, Evelyn will take you to the university office to begin the arrangements." Clara tried to speak, but emotion silenced her. She clasped her hands together, trembling. "Thank you, sir, for seeing my son." Alexander's answer was simple but sincere. "He made me see myself." Lucas lingered near the staircase, half hidden in shadow. For a moment, he watched the three of them, his father, the maid, and the boy who had become a mirror of everything he once wished to be. His chest ached, but no words came. Evelyn noticed him and, for a second, thought he might apologize, but he only turned away, climbing the stairs slowly, each step heavier than the last. Noah glanced at the torn document on the floor, the fragments curling at the edges like remnants of a storm finally spent. He didn't yet understand the full weight of what he'd changed, but somewhere deep inside, he felt that silence could no longer define him. Morning came softly, painting the mansion in muted gold. The scent of fresh rain still lingered in the air as the staff moved quietly through the halls, whispering about the events of the night before. In the dining room, a long table gleamed beneath the chandelier, but for once, the seats weren't arranged by status. Alexander sat at the head, with Noah and Clara to his right, Evelyn to his left. The absence of hierarchy felt strange, almost healing. Alexander raised his cup of coffee, his voice steadier than it had been in years. "This house was built on order," he said, "but I see now it survived only because of the people who gave it meaning." His eyes met Clara's, then Noah's. "It's time the world knows that names and uniforms don't measure worth." Evelyn smiled faintly, sensing that history was being rewritten in the quietest of ways. Moments later, reporters and board members gathered in the main hall for a press conference. Cameras flashed as Alexander addressed them, his words deliberate and unguarded. He spoke of truth, integrity, and a boy who refused to stay silent when the powerful chose not to listen. His voice didn't rise, but it carried the weight of redemption. When he finished, there was a long pause, then applause that began softly and grew until it filled the room. Noah stood at the back, half hidden, but Alexander's eyes found him. Their gaze met for a brief, wordless moment that said everything power never could. The day after the conference, the Blackburn mansion seemed different, warmer, alive. Workers smiled as they passed Clara in the hall, greeting her by name instead of glances. Noah spent the morning in the library, surrounded by the same shelves that once felt forbidden. Now, Alexander himself had insisted he use the space for study. The quiet no longer felt heavy, it felt earned. Outside, the autumn light filtered through tall windows, dancing across the floor where the torn pieces of the old contract had been swept away. But in their place, a new envelope lay on the desk, stamped with a familiar insignia, Kronberg Industries. Evelyn entered, holding it carefully. "This just arrived," she said, offering it to Alexander. The old man frowned, breaking the seal. Inside was a single page, handwritten in German. He read silently, then passed it to Noah. The boy's eyes moved quickly across the lines, translating in his mind. When he looked up, his voice was calm. "They're not demanding anything," he said. "They're asking to meet, to establish a new partnership, one based on transparency." Alexander's expression softened, relief mingling with something close to pride. "Then perhaps honesty still has power in this world," he murmured. Clara watched her son, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. "You changed more than a company, Noah," she whispered. He smiled faintly, eyes glinting with quiet certainty. Outside, the sky cleared completely, sunlight pouring over the estate, a light no longer filtered by silence or fear. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel now, leave a like, and share this video so more people can discover that even the smallest act of courage can change the world. Write in the comments, "I believe in the power of courage." Together, let's spread stories that transform lives and prove that hope can rise from the most unexpected voices. Thank you so much for your support.